Hello, and welcome to the Why All Toolbars Are Evil, What IT Pros Need to Know About Browser Security webinar presented by Mike Danseglio and Lisa Szpunar. Hi, I'm Chris Graham from TrainSignal, and I'd like to take a minute to tell you what to expect in the next hour. I'd like to draw your attention to the questions box in your webinar control panel. Mike and Lisa will be answering questions today, so please submit any questions you might have during the presentation. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, let us know in the questions box and we'll do our best to assist you. Today's presentation will be recorded and available to view on our blog. We'll email you the link after the presentation. After you exit the webinar, you will be prompted to take a short survey. TrainSignal wants to hear from you, so please take a few minutes to complete the survey. We'll also be choosing one participant from today's audience to receive a free copy of TrainSignal's CompTIA Security Plus training created by our own Lisa Szpunar. To be eligible to win, you must complete the survey you will receive after the webinar. Be sure to fill it out. It only takes a few seconds. Also, if you have additional comments or feedback, you can email us at webinars@trainsignal.com. And with that, thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Now, here's Mike and Lisa.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Szpunar.
And I'm Mike Danseglio. Good morning, everybody. Go ahead, Lisa.
So in this webinar, we've got four things that we're going to cover. We're going to cover the widespread use of web browsing, what a web browsing toolbar really does, and why no browser is truly secure, and also how to prevent toolbar-based attacks. But before we do that, we're going to do a quick poll to just get a little bit of an idea of how many of you out there use toolbars. So I'm going to start the poll.
And I should mention while Lisa's starting the poll that there's no right or wrong answer. There's no, you won't be graded. We promise not to retain the data. Just curious, I think, right, Lisa?
Yeah, we just want to get a feel for our audience and where they're at. Looks like about 80% of you guys have voted, so I'll give you about one more second.
One.
Well, okay, maybe more than one.
Two. No, we're fine.
Okay, let's see the results.
Cool. Those are pretty reasonable results. I actually quite like the fact that very, very few people don't know whether they have or have not installed the toolbar, right?
Yeah.
And that's definitely cool. And the 45% that have, you're probably not going to be really happy with most of the rest of what Lisa and I talk about today. But that number will probably change by the end, actually.
Yeah, they'll be uninstalling them as we go. I'm really surprised that there wasn't at least 1% that said, I don't know. That's good.
Yeah, that's really good, actually. It's really happy news.
Okay, and this should bring us back to the presentation. And let's get started with the ubiquity of web browsing.
Definitely. I think that most people realize that web browsing is taken for granted nowadays, but it's interesting that most folks don't realize that it's taken for granted at all locations at all times, almost like running water or electricity or reasonable police protection and crime protection. It's like a utility. It's just kind of there. It's almost like air. You just kind of assume that wherever you are on the planet, you're going to have air. You kind of assume that you're going to be able to get some type of sustenance or you wouldn't be there in the first place. And web browsing, believe it or not, has actually moved into that place in our culture and our society today. And it's provided for everyone all over the place, oftentimes free, but even if it's not free. And in fact, this is kind of cool. I like to think up, situations or queries. So I wanted to ask Lisa.
Yes.
So if, and this kind of exemplifies the point, but answer honestly, please.
Okay.
If you couldn't browse web at the office, would that actually make your job more difficult or impact you?
If I couldn't browse the web at work?
Yeah.
Yeah, my job is pretty much the internet. Why are you asking me? What are you going to do?
No. Relax. Go to your happy place.
Because if I couldn't browse the web at work, I would probably quit or get you fired or something.
Oh, all right. Okay. So let's back off that a little bit. So let's go to a second scenario, which is you can hit the web at work, but only approved sites that me, being your IT administrator, know are safe.
Okay, in theory that sounds okay. But wait, why do you get to decide what's approved? I don't really have any faith at this point that I'll be able to get to what I want to get to when I want to get to it if some IT guy is controlling it.
Some IT, come on now, that's me. That's not some IT guy. And you know what? I'm smarter than you about these sites, and I'm your IT guy, so I get to decide. And it's how about okay, so I'm going to my happy place, and let's think about coming to and this happens in real companies just without these words. How about you tell me which sites you need to go to, and I'll go ahead and put those on the list of sites that everyone can go to. Would that work? Is that cool?
How long will it take to get a new site approved? This sounds like a huge waste of time. No way.
Yeah, so, okay, so yeah, I guess that would be a problem for people that need the internet for their job, and since you and most people need the internet for their jobs, especially working in the tech sector, yeah, that's going to be a problem. So it's kind of cool in that, and so calm, Lisa, I'll talk for a second, and it exemplifies conversations that happen over months or years with different groups and different people, but the conversation we just had is pretty typical of having the fact that web browsing is taken for granted, that people get unhappy whether there's problems or not, whether there's immediate problems, long-term problems, or even just the potential for some type of impact, whether it's to work or whether it's contrived and it's not really work impactful. I don't really need to be able to play Farmville to do my job. But if I think that maybe Mike, the evil IT security guy, is going to stop me from playing Farmville, it's going to be part of my job, and then it's going to get nasty. Would you agree?
Yeah, maybe not Farmville, but yeah.
Okay, you're right. What are you kids using these days? The MySpace or something?
The MySpace.
So yeah, I mean it's actually. Do you want to maybe discuss a little bit, Lisa, around why it's easier to do web browsing, or why web browsing is so critical?
Well, I mean, companies are making money off of making web browsing easier. Like it says here, it's a business. So if you consider a user that can't type, doesn't know how to create a shortcut, doesn't really know how to use the address bar, just types the URL right into Google.
Yep.
That sort of thing. You can imagine how much trouble they would get into.
Yeah.
So using those toolbars and those plugins is going to make their lives easier.
Yep. I think easier is definitely important, especially for a large demographic, a large type of user or category of user. It would be really, really, really cool if there was some kind of icon or illustration that would show what that user would look like. And yeah, there we go. There's Chris's Grammy. And Chris is our moderator today, so we'll poke fun at him periodically throughout. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that last point that you made, it's easier to click a button for many users, not just users that are not familiar with computers and didn't grow up from day one with computers, but many users, corporate environments, home environments, all those type of environments. It's easier for them to find and click a button than it is to do all kinds of other types of tasks to get to the same result, right?
Right.
I think that's your point.
Yeah, and this grandma here that we're talking about, is kind of the least common denominator, is the least savvy user. But I think that even more skilled users, even someone that thinks they know what they're doing, can get into even more trouble if they're maybe overconfident in their abilities.
Agreed. Agreed.
So obviously we're kind of moving towards the point that easier isn't always better.
No, it's definitely not. Easier isn't always better, and certainly you've got the opportunities to put buttons that make people's browsing experience a lot easier right into their browser. And I'll explain it as a marketing professional first, even though I'm not one. I don't play one on television. Isn't it easier if you have a quick button to do a Google search or a quick dialog box where you can search this particular website or my internet service provider or my virus scanning software, that kind of stuff? That sounds fantabulous. Absolutely. Make it easier. Give me a button. Give me a flashy little button with little lights and little animation until you've got this experience here, which looks like a overblown soundboard of malware.
And do we know it's malware?
Well, here's the thing is, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows whether some of those things are funneling in malware as fast as the internet connection will support. Some of them may not. This is a good example of one of those where there's just so darn many toolbars, so many things that are going on in the browser, you really don't know what's going on. But I think it's important to look behind what's going on here first, and to decide whether these things are actually funneling in malware, right?
Right. So let's look at what does a toolbar really do.
Cool.
So at first glance, like Mike was saying, a toolbar is simply just a cute, convenient feature. It doesn't seem to be doing any harm, and it really isn't software. And it might be doing the task that it's said it would do for you. It might be getting you your searches easier. It might be getting you to Farmville easier. But it might be doing some other things too. So we're going to talk about that as well.
Agreed. It might be doing some good things, might be doing some bad things. And I think one example of them is actually one of my mom's favorites, and I think you mentioned as well, one of yours, or one of your mom's favorites, Lisa.
Back in the day, yeah, the Bonsai Buddy.
I like to call him Smedley the purple monkey, and he talks to me and he keeps me company and he whispers evil things. But no, mostly he just actually, he kind of animates and he's fun and he's a toolbar, isn't he?
Yeah.
And so isn't that cute? How could he possibly be evil? Look how cuddly and purple he is.
But upon closer inspection.
Exactly. On closer inspection, really what these toolbars are doing, including Smedley, the purple monkey, he's breaking the barrier that the browser has built up, essentially, between all that stuff that's happening on the internet and the PC that someone's working on. Those toolbars run arbitrary code. Whatever the developer, whatever the code writer or company created, whatever they want to run on that system, that toolbar is running at all times, whenever the browser is up, and in many cases, even when the browser is not visible or not up, because they can change the browser into a wonky situation where it doesn't have an active window, but it is still running in the background. And it's always running this code. It could be running the least innocuous code in the world. It could just be displaying the little purple monkey and making him smile and nod and tell you happy things. Or it could be scanning your hard drive and sucking out credit cards and personal information, or funneling in Trojans and malware, all that kind of stuff. That's the ability all of these toolbars really have once they're installed in the browser. And not just security context of the browser, because we've got this concept of browsers running in a less privileged mode, but these toolbars can run, and the code behind them can run in really any security context. As administrator, some folks on this call are parts of large organizations, enterprises, and medium large businesses. Sure, those folks probably actually are logged into their PCs as domain admins and enterprise admins, and that toolbar is running on a browser that's running as domain admin or enterprise admin. Therefore, that little purple monkey is now your enterprise admin. And all the code that the little purple monkey, the little Schmedley wants to run, it's running as domain admin. So if the little purple monkey decides he wants to create some new groups or change some ACLs or do some RAS permission changes, no problem at all. That little purple monkey can do that.
So to expand on that, why no browser is truly secure is what we're going to talk about in the next section. And like Mike was saying, it extends the capabilities like beyond the original intent of what the web browser was meant to do. That's what we want, right? We want extra functionality. Well, originally, browsers were just created to display HTML content. But now, of course, we want it to be interactive, we want it to do animation, web conferencing, everything. And this extra functionality, you know, a lot of that's added into the browsers nowadays, but it can also be achieved with those toolbars, those plugins, those add-ons that Mike was talking about. And then, like you said, it breaks the browser functionality sandbox using Flash, using Silverlight, Skype, other things. And it can give the browser access at the security level of the user to the OS and different OS functions like your audio, your webcam, your graphics card. So yeah, it's really, when you're adding that extra functionality, you just have to remember that you're adding extra possibilities for threats.
Exactly. That's exactly the way I think of it. And certainly some are more commonly exploited than others, some are less commonly exploited, but all of them have at the root that same, I think, core potential for funneling threats in or allowing threats to exist.
And a lot of those threats are stemmed from, obviously, the user just wanting to make things work. So they'll install their own browser. They'll reconfigure their existing browser. They'll install those toolbars, those add-ons, to increase their functionality. They'll do pretty much whatever they want.
Exactly. And heavy-handed admin, I see a lot of backlash when administrators do the kind of things that we talked about earlier, where if I come into your organization and start blacklisting parts of the internet or you know, doing a allow deny for different services or different websites or different types of content, their users are just going to work around it. They always do. So any kind of remediation for this has to include some user factor as well as some technical factor, and I think we're going to cover that a little bit later, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So let's move into one of the more current issues with that extended functionality, which is drive-by downloads. Now, first I just want to give a quick definition before we move into this slide of what a drive-by download is in case you don't know. It's a download that happens usually without the user's knowledge. But sometimes the term is also used to describe a download that is actually authorized, like someone clicks yes, but they don't really understand what's really happening or the consequences. So drive-by malware delivery is actually really interesting to cyber criminals simply because it's a more stealthy form of infection and it results in really successful attacks. And besides that, it's kind of easy. I mean, there's kits out there to create these drive-by downloads and other malware, and those kits are readily available on the internet. It's actually pretty easy. So once a cyber attacker has this stuff ready to be attacking, it happens when, like,
yeah. Oh, me? Oh, yeah. Hi. How are you? So yeah, I was kind of mystified by it because you're absolutely. I was just thinking about all the possibilities and potentials there, and yeah, it's absolutely right, Lisa. It's scary as heck to think about the fact that a user can just swing by a website, not click on anything, not even mouse over anything on the website, and wind up activating content. Usually the content that exploits a flaw in some of the stuff you talked about a moment ago in Silverlight or in Flash or in some other plugin, or, hey, here's an interesting link, or in a toolbar that they've got installed. Yeah, did you see what I did there? Where I glued that stuff together? That was cool. And then what happens is the combination of the user pre-installing something that breaks the security boundary of the toolbar or of the browser, whether it's a toolbar or one of these other plugins, plus some compromised content on the site that the user is likely to go to equals compromise. And the scary part, I think, of drive-by downloads is that users don't have to interact with the site. Users have been trained over the years that if they go to a website that's nasty, if they misspell a word and they go to a site that looks like it's bad, they're trained, okay, just close the browser immediately and you're fine. Well, that's just not the case anymore. It's sad. And then as well, attackers are learning, okay, well, the profile here is that I should attack, instead of standing up my own site, you know, hackersbeware.com, or gosh, I hope you install my toolbar.org. Instead of that, what they're doing is they're saying, I wonder if there's a compromisable website or web page on a site that people already trust, like Amazon or Google or Twitter, something like that. If I could just put, or MSN or Yahoo, if I could just put a little bit of malware, drive-by malware, on an existing trusted site, people are going to come to it naturally anyway. I don't even have to drive traffic to it. And if the drive-by activates based on a toolbar that they already have or a plugin that they already have, then I don't really need to do much except plant the malware and stand back and watch the fun. And those are frightening things, right?
It is pretty frightening. So how do we prevent toolbar-based attacks?
Yep, so if you're not familiar with this, actually we'll ask Chris. Chris, are you familiar with this particular meme? Should we just wait forever for Chris to come back?
I don't think he has his mic on.
I'm here. That particular meme means too long, didn't read.
Exactly. Exactly, and I like to use these TLDR slides, thank you, Chris, as I like to use them as kind of a summary. If you didn't listen to anything else that Lisa and I are talking about, you should definitely listen to the fact that all toolbars are bad, all of them. Not some of them, not a few of them, not the ones that don't have the purple monkey. I'm talking about all of them. All of them are bad, and you should definitely stop your users from getting them. Lisa, what do you think?
I think that's a pretty bold statement, but it's definitely true, because even if a toolbar is safe today, the next update or whatever could be some added nefarious functionality that wasn't originally intended.
Wow, you're big on the 25-cent words with nefarious. That's cool. Yeah,
Sorry.
Absolutely. It could be very resilient and very well built today, but does it auto-update? Does it auto-patch? Who the heck knows? Tomorrow there might be a great vulnerability that's discovered that you can't get rid of. So
right.
Absolutely. So we'll explore these concepts, I think, and methodologies for approaching the security of toolbars now, I think.
Yeah, so let's see what we do about it.
So I like to think of this as you drew it, a lovely layer cake, in that you do need, I think, key prevention techniques at different layers. And certainly starting at the network layer, looking at traffic coming in and out of the network, watching for toolbars and other malware at the edge, then moving into host-based, some type of malware protection, some type of regular scanning, inbound, outbound scanning, and periodic data storage protection, as well as client hardening the browsers to make them resilient against browser installs and drive-by installs. And then user education, I think, is absolutely critical. The fact that a very small amount of user education can go a long way. Lisa and I actually have another webcast coming up in just a few weeks that's going to cover just that topic in some depth, right?
Yes, absolutely. You guys should all sign up for that. So let's look at some of these layers in a little bit more detail.
Yep, so malware protection, if I may for a moment, Lisa.
Yes.
Excellent. So they are oftentimes malware scanners find toolbars because the toolbars have some nastiness embedded in them, whether it's by the original author or by someone that repackages or repurposes it, or over time there's been some flaw found, a lot of times these malware protection suites do find toolbars and block them. And that's great, and I quite like that. And Lisa and I had quite a lengthy discussion on, do we talk about specific anti-malware solutions or not? And I think we both agreed that as long as there's some anti-malware protection implemented and regularly updated and maintained, it's really whatever you choose. There's some great free ones out there. There's some great commercial-grade malware protection systems out there. There's a lot of systems that do better deployment, better self-update, better peer-to-peer updates and communication. And it's whatever flavor really the IT pro and the administrator and the business decision makers want, as long as it's regularly updated and throughout an enterprise. Would you not agree that those are kind of the key points?
Update, update, update. Yes.
Exactly.
Now for a little bit more expensive option.
Yeah, these are not cheap, but they're really super cool, and they have glowing red lights in the data center, and they're really neat. So yeah, actually, network traffic inspection, deep packet inspection, content inspection, some of the fourth and fifth generation scanners, active scanners, do look for toolbars as well as other malware and other nastiness going into and out of a network, and these are great. Sticking these on the edge is extremely useful, and whether you use a proxy-based traffic inspection or host-based deployed throughout an organization, or even edge-based that's actually a hardware device, that's fine. And again, we don't endorse a particular one. There's plenty of them out there. Barracuda does this, F5 does this, Cisco does this. All kinds of wonderful companies do this, and there's no panacea. There's no perfect one. I mean, Palo Alto is another company that makes some, and some of theirs are really new and nifty and use different algorithms for detection. Ultimately, it's not about which one is the best, because there is no the best. There's only the worst, and the worst is one that you don't have. If you don't have one, that's the worst scenario.
Mike, we have a question from the audience that says, what about third-party firewalls?
Okay, so third-party firewalls, I think what they're referring to is non-Microsoft firewalls, because Microsoft is the only first party, right?
I guess.
That's what they want you to believe. They are out there. And so actually, I quite like any kind of firewalls, but firewalls, typically speaking, don't do a great job of blocking toolbar implementation. Toolbars usually show up over port 80. Which almost all web browsing requires, and I'm not going to invite Lisa to stab me again by suggesting that I block port 80. So actually, firewalls against this type of attack are largely not effective, at least in the infestation or the deployment of toolbars. It may block some of the nasty toolbar activity that happens, but it probably won't actually block the toolbar from showing up.
Right, so we're trying to get them to get the users to not install the toolbars, but
exactly.
The firewall can help if they already have.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on.
Alrighty, so for hardening workplace browsers, this is another layer of protection, I think, and it's a useful one. A lot of people beat the crap out of Internet Explorer because it's just not a great browser. It's not a really cool, sexy, interesting browser like a Firefox or a Mozilla or a Opera or a Safari or whatever the kids are using today for their browsing. But to be honest, in a corporate environment, in a business environment, Internet Explorer largely is a highly effective browser, not just because it's built in and it's regularly updated by Microsoft, but also because you can configure it with group policy very heavily. You can absolutely put the screws down on Internet Explorer to block things like browser add-ons, ActiveX controls, restrict known nefarious sites. So Lisa?
Yes, use my word.
Yes. So instead of stopping you from going to all sites or even sites I don't know about, the only sites, if I tell you that the only sites I'm going to stop you from going to and you're going to get redirected to a page that says you can't go here, are sites that I know are going to infect you with malware. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, nobody likes malware.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe on that web page that I redirect you to, instead of just saying you've been redirected because there's malware there, maybe I'll put the purple monkey on there for you.
Please.
See, I knew that would make you happy. So all kinds of stuff like that. The Internet Explorer is just amazingly effective at being configured in that way to do zones, security zones, whitelisting, blacklisting of sites, and restrict a lot of the active content, which will help prevent browser additions like ActiveX controls, like toolbars, and all that stuff from getting there in the first place.
Okay.
You want to talk about users, Lisa?
Oh, users. I thought I was playing the part of the user. Yeah, no, you really, really need to educate your users. Besides those technical things that Mike was just talking about that do need to be put in place, we also do need to educate our users. None of you guys answered, I don't know if I have a browser, but a bunch of you did answer that you did have a browser. So, you know, we just need to educate our users that they shouldn't be installing toolbars, they shouldn't be installing add-ons unless they're approved. And I like this, tell them to let them impress you with their resilience. So challenge them to be better web browsers. And like Mike said before, we are going to have a webinar on educating users.
Exactly. I really can't underline that enough, Lisa. It's in my experience, it's a lot of the bang for the buck that you get with hardening systems and hardening you know, organizations against toolbars. It's just educating users, telling them that not all toolbars are okay, even some that they may trust, like the little purple monkey that pops up and reminds you that today is Grammy's 50th birthday. Yeah, that's great, but they don't, and they don't know that that purple monkey can be doing naughty things, and they probably wouldn't want the purple monkey if they knew it might be doing naughty things. So it's kind of an important bit that people don't get, that toolbars can be bad. Other than, as we talked about when we were preparing the deck, Lisa mentioned, but look at the tiny space that the user has to browse after all these toolbars installed, remember?
Yeah, back on that picture of all of the toolbars, let me pull it back up. I was like, well, there's your actual browsing window.
Yep, that tiny little thing down at the bottom, but guess what? Some people think that that's more usable because of all of the buttons. And they don't realize, those same people don't realize that all of this kind of stuff could be funneling in, and probably is funneling in malware and spying on what they're doing on the internet and copying files when they upload and download files to the internet or to WorkPeers or to Salesforce.com. It's actually grabbing all of that data and siphoning it off to an attacker. And that's really, really, really bad. And if users knew that, I think that they would be more hesitant to install these, or at least more curious to ask IT, why don't we have the Purple Monkey add-on? Because I think it's kind of cool. Once that conversation happens, typically speaking, most users will not want to install it. And if they don't want to install it, they're not going to install it.
Actually, we have a kind of comment/question from our audience that says that sometimes users don't even know how they downloaded a toolbar. And if there's a way to prevent that from happening, and obviously we talked about the ways to prevent that from happening, which is through group policy and through configuring the browser.
That's very true. Actually, that's an excellent point, Lisa, and I want to expound on that for a second, because it's an interesting kind of comment/question. Users do not, you know, the comment I heard was users sometimes don't know how they got a toolbar installed.
Right.
And, yeah, go ahead.
One toolbar could be downloading another toolbar.
That exactly, a cascade attack where one sucks down another, where the purple monkey decides he wants a little friend, and he downloads Choco Cat. And now we're going to get sued by the Hello Kitty people, Sanrio, sorry, but but no, no, your point is extremely valid. The cascade style attack or cascade style compromise is a bad one. But also, if you've ever installed things like, I don't know, Winamp actually is one of my favorite music players. But Winamp, when you install it, because it's free, it gives you the option to install a toolbar in your browser to help pay for the freeness of the product. So while the product itself actually is completely innocuous, Winamp's a great product. I've used it for many, many, many years. It's installing a toolbar. It's giving you the option to install a toolbar to go along with it, which may or may not be doing things and may or may not even be under the control of the original developer. And to the attendee's point and to your question, a lot of times users, when they install software, it's just next, 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 finish. I want this done. I want this on my system. I clicked on Winamp, and gosh darn it, I want this thing fired up and playing some MP3s. I want to listen to Hanson right now. And so I'm just going to next, 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 finish, install, and I didn't look at the fact that I installed a toolbar or 2 toolbars or opted in to, you know, marketing based on my demographics kind of stuff. So I used to not believe that users could not find out where the browser toolbar came from. But to be honest, now I think it's more and more and more common that users get toolbars and they don't know where they came from. So educating users that when you see a toolbar pop up and you don't know where it came from, or even if you do know where it came from, that's something that maybe IT should be aware of. Maybe IT helped prevent it from getting there in the first place, but even if it got there, IT can help get rid of it.
Right. Actually, we did have another question that kind of goes back a little bit to an earlier slide, Mike. They asked which Windows security guide that you were referring to for configuring Internet Explorer.
My favorite, the Windows security guide. For Internet Explorer, actually the Windows security guide that's appropriate to the client operating system. So the Windows Vista security guide, the Windows XP security guide, the Windows 7 security guide. Those are the security guides I'm referring to. They actually include in them documentation on configuring Internet Explorer and hardening Internet Explorer. And the user asking that question has probably already found out that there is a, I'll use a fancy word like you, Lisa, there is a myriad, there are a myriad or is a myriad?
Either one.
Okay, there's a myriad, I'll just do that, of settings. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds actually of settings for Internet Explorer security and configuration in group policy for each client base. And so I think it's great to start with a good spot, to have a good starting place like the Windows Security Guide, Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows XP Security Guide, any of those Windows client-based security guides will have group policy information. Now obviously you implement the group policy on your servers and on your domain controllers, but they get pushed down to the clients, and that's where the users are browsing the Internet. Users typically don't browse the Internet from servers. They don't log on to Windows Server and browse the Internet. And in fact, I've made it very hard for them to do that.
Okay, let's go ahead and give the audience some of our contact information and give them a chance to ask some more questions if they have any more questions. So you guys can interact with me on Twitter at Lisa_Szpunar. Now notice that Szpunar spelled differently from how my name is really spelled, because it's spelled really stupid. Blame my husband.
You know, he's not even here to defend himself.
It's okay. And then you can obviously talk to Mike on Twitter as well at MikeDan_CISSP, or email him at nextdirectiontech.com, or obviously he's got a website, nextdirectiontech.com.
Yep, absolutely. Feel free to wing me questions on the webcast that we've done, or hook up on Twitter, whatever, anything like that. I'm always happy to answer questions or discuss. And speaking of which, do we have any other questions?
Let me look.
Yep.
Yes, Mike, there's several. Would you like me to read them to you?
I can't see them, so I think
if you
that'd be a great idea.
Okay, yeah. So here's one. I use Firefox instead of IE because of ActiveX controls. Is IE the only browser that allows ActiveX controls to run?
Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes,
Yes.
and thank God for that. Yeah, ActiveX controls, there's a lot of different kinds of concerns around ActiveX controls, largely in the compatibility space, but also in the security space. But yes, Internet Explorer is the only, without some heavy-duty hacking on the back end, is the only browser that allows you to run ActiveX controls.
But you can turn them off.
Thank goodness for that, exactly. Next question, Chris.
Alrighty. Do you know of any good examples of rogue toolbars? Examples great to show users the actual dark side and not sounding like we are using FUD. F-U-D.
Oh, the internet memes just keep on coming.
Sure.
So yeah, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of the different toolbars is there. For actual toolbars that have had compromises, I see these a lot in some of the older things, like the dog pile toolbar had some vulnerabilities. Believe it or not, the little purple monkey had some vulnerabilities as well, but it wasn't a direct vulnerability of the little purple monkey. It's one of my favorite ones because the little purple monkey just used, it was kind of an animated framework, really. It's almost, it was almost like Microsoft Bob or Clippy from Office in a way, because those were just animations and an infrastructure, but then the data behind the little purple monkey or Microsoft Bob, Rover, or Clippy were just files on the hard drive, just basic configuration data. And what happened was the folks that did the little purple monkey, we'll call him Smedley, Smedley was programmable by a text file that was not protected, that was on the user's machine. So an attacker could just put whatever the heck they wanted in that text file and make Smedley do whatever the heck they wanted him to do. Not physically, not visually, but run arbitrary code, say things, make little balloon pop-ups of arbitrary things like, hey, I've noticed that it's been a couple of days since you've gone to this website and entered your credit card information. Should do it now, winky, winky, wink, and there you go. And it's a combination, I think, of social engineering and technical engineering. But the little purple monkey is one of my favorites, and some of the older, like Dogpile is one that actually got compromised, not necessarily by the company, but attackers rebranding, repackaging, and redistributing it.
Here's another one. Java is always trying to install the ask toolbar, as we know. And I'm sure users don't pay attention to that, so it often slips in when the users update Java, which is every 5 or 6 minutes, from my experience. How can we prevent this? User education?
Lisa, you want to cover that one while I laugh?
I don't actually know if there is a technical way to prevent those extra installs every time an update happens, but definitely user education would be a place to start.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of user education to counter that kind of threat. That's just awesome. But yeah, Java, unfortunately, is a wonderful platform, programming platform, but unless you're enforcing Java checking for signatures, code signatures, and making sure they chain to a trusted root, you're always going to have users getting compromised that way. And so the balancing act there is you lose an awful lot of usability because most people don't sign Java apps. So most of the Java apps won't run even if you install Java, if you turn that feature on. And if you turn it off, you're just as vulnerable to attack. So I agree with Lisa in that the user education bit is absolutely critical. Making sure that Java is not just going to fire up on any website without the user giving permission, and then telling the user when and when not to give permission is probably the most effective technique short of enforcing code signing.
Okay, we've got another one here. Any recommendations for traffic inspection products where reporting can be turned off? He says, or she says actually, our firm has an issue with Big Brother type reporting.
Why would you want to turn reporting off?
Big Brother type report. Oh, I see. Okay, so I think what the user's saying or the pro is saying is that some companies just don't want to store that information. They don't want to monitor users. The perception is that reporting based on user patterns and user usage is akin to Big Brother monitoring of traffic, right? Lisa, do you think that that's a fair in some cases?
Yeah, I guess that's a good explanation of what the customer or what the person meant.
Yep. And so for that case, I would say that any of the systems that I've used for inspection allow you to either not collect log information at all, or to purge it as often as you want. So simply speaking, you just you retain it for 24 hours, and then you purge it. You just have a rollover of 24 hours for the log, or you only collect it. Most systems will also let you dial it back, so you only capture things like active attacks or active issues with pattern recognition, and not capture normal internet traffic, not capture normal interaction. And so I would say that would be the solution, would be not so much to look for a system that allows you to turn it off, because hopefully they don't actually allow you to turn it off on an inspection system, but allow you to dial it down or roll it over.
Yeah, and just because those logs are there doesn't mean anyone has to look at them.
Right, but if they're paranoid users, like Chris, our friend here, crazy about making sure nobody knows what websites he's going to, then I think it's more comfortable in some environments to just say, no, we don't actually collect those, or actually we collect those, but they're automatically purged after 24 hours, and the only time we look at them is during an attack.
Sure.
So you got a combination of things. It really depends on the environment, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yes, Suzanne says yes, the paranoid lawyers.
Lawyers, of course.
Mike, or Lisa, have you run into situations where a toolbar causes browser instability or poor performance?
Runs really slow, yeah, all the time.
You install all of them.
Soundboard, Lisa? Oh my gosh. Yeah, they all consume resources. They all consume, at a bare minimum, they consume memory, and they certainly consume some type of space, visual space. They suck up browser window space. So if you have a user begging you for a 30-inch monitor because 28.5 inches of their browser is covered with Toolbar, well, that's a resource consumption issue, right?
Yeah, when working in IT, your entire family is IT guy or gal. So anytime I have someone ask me, tell me my computer's running slow, I usually can just uninstall a toolbar and a few other things, and it's good to go.
That's exactly it. That's spot on. They always consume resources, and you're right. And family, they'll call you after 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 get installed. And you suck them out, and all of a sudden, wow, it's like new.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool.
And then when you fix it, then that means they're going to call you the next time.
They're going to call you in 3 months. Whatever you did to my computer, you broke it. Come back and fix it. Yeah. So I broke it by uninstalling all of those toolbars, and now you want me to fix it by reinstalling all of those? Never mind. I'm not coming over. I've got something to do tonight. I got to do my hair tonight.
Do your hair.
I got to do my hair. It's bouffant night. So, Chris, any serious questions coming?
Yeah. This one, it would take you 2 minutes to fix your hair.
Yeah, well, 2 seconds. You see the picture right there. It's not like I have more than about 5 hairs.
Yep.
Mine's orange.
Why does Adobe Flash players sneak toolbars into their install package? And I guess probably on a more general, why do all these mini installers sneak toolbars into their installers?
I heard Lisa grinding her teeth when you were asking the question, so I'll answer while she composes herself on this one. Adobe Flash is essentially, the way I think of Adobe Flash in general is it is an operating system. And I know that sounds a little weird, but it allows you to build applications. It's a platform. It happens to run within a browser sometimes and not other times. And so as part of that, it's a revenue stream for Adobe, and that's cool. It's great that Adobe wants to make money. But part of the way Adobe monetizes Flash is to get stuff in the browser, not just when their content is being rendered, when Flash content is playing, but also when Flash content's not there, and the best way to do that is selling space like browsers, like just having a browser ride along for the for the trip, when you install Adobe, if you can get Google and a Google browser installed, Google might pay Adobe 50 cents. And that's great. That makes a lot of money for Adobe if you scale that to the number of people installing Flash. So it's not necessarily that they want to infect users or that they want to spread malware, but they have a business to run.
So the TLDR on that one would be money.
Mm-hmm. Money.
Money.
Money, 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 money. Money is the root of all evil today.
Okay, I think that's all the questions.
Wonderful.
All right, so I guess we could start wrapping it up, right, guys?
Sure.
All right.
I think so.
All right, well, thanks a lot. I guess that's all the time we have for today. Thanks again for attending and for your participation. And as a reminder, today's webinar was recorded and will be available to view at trainsignal.com/blog/webinars. And there will be no toolbar downloads included.
I hope not.
And then we will also email you the link to that download. And remember, as you leave, please fill out the survey for a chance to win the copy of Lisa's CompTIA Security Plus training. We will email the winner by the end of the week. Thanks again and have a great day.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.